Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 11. If you tuned in last episode, on episode 10, we talked about the language of death. And at the end, I kind of rambled on about how I had so much more to say. And so there was enough to say for me to finish my thought process and to just continue with how I feel and see just through the use of simple language, we could shift death just up a vibration or two. I'd settle for that. So, anyways, basically, the topic was called the language of death. Um, we have the language of love, and it's depicted in songs and by songwriters, but we don't really have a language of death. And when we do, it's based on a very sorrowful and sad journey. And again, I'm not saying that death is not that, but there's so much more to it than just that. And for that to be the only stamped impressions that we have, to me, is just a disservice to death. It's just a disservice to our ancestors. It's a disservice to the whole gift of getting to be birthed and live this life and experience death, and to shun it and make it seem like it's, just the very last thing that's going to happen. And we just are going to let it be a strong, stigmatized, tabooish kind of ending. And I totally disagree with that. So I'm going to kind of talk about some of the things, or I'm going to list a few of the things that I see that our culture is different from how I was raised. There are words like, I lost my wife. My child passed. My grandmother passed away. There are other words like croaked, and they're no longer here. This is all language. And it is for me, it's kind of a sly way of giving death a softer, kinder image. It doesn't need that. Death is brilliant. It is brilliant in the fact that the minute you take your first breath, your death clock has already started, my friends, my tribe, my fellow human beings. The minute your child, your dog, your cat, your lizard, the elephants in the Serengeti, it is just the way it is. And we celebrate life, but we forget at that moment to also start celebrating death, because it's an eventuality. And it has just as much promise, even though it's at the very ending of the story. If you're writing a story, if you're developing a play, if you're making a product, if you're building a company, if you're having a child, if you're getting married, you have a beginning, a middle, and an end. And that ending should be spectacular. And we don't do that. We give all the props to the beginning of the story. And okay. And then we give a little attention to the middle. Most of it is, you better do this, you better not do this, you better have this done, you better not have. So there's a lot of language that kind of not really conforms you, but dictates your thought process when it comes to death. I don't know how many of you actually on a Sunday night with family at the table having a family dinner. That was just something that was very prominent in my world. It was a rule. We had to have Sunday dinner with everyone there. Very little exceptions were due. Death was okay. I mean, that was a viable, excusable reason not to come. But we had death talks at dinner. We would go around and everybody would kind of say how their day was. And a few of the ranch hands would say, oh, the cow died, the cow in pasture 2 died, or Ellie Mae, the pig, died. And, most of the time, one or all of us of the kids were a part of that. We watched how it happened. We watched when it went down. We were told about it. Um, we were explained that it served a purpose and it was going to die anyways, whether we took it to market or whether nature took over or just the pig itself, the bioorganic apparatus of the pig just didn't pan out for as long as we thought it was going to be. We celebrated the pig. And no, not by eating it. Um, but we did celebrate its life. We celebrated the cow's life, our horse's life. My mom taught us about life and death through the garden. She related it in spring and summer and fall and winter. And, spring was life and winter was death, but it was also rebirth. It was a continuing circle. There wasn't a whole lot of scary, kind of talk with us. There was no supreme being over our head that was watching us on a daily basis, making sure we didn't screw up so there was none of that heavy burden. I think we put a heavy, 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 heavy burden on all of us about dying, and there's just so much more than death being, or there should be. And death is a burden right now. It's a burden with our language that we use. It's a burden in how the language in the medical community uses. It's a burden on how the insurance language uses it. I mean, talk to any insurance guy about a terminal illness. He'll give you language like you have never seen before, heard before. And it's not a very pretty one either. Talk to your medical doctors about, step up to them and say, hey, look, I'm done. I don't want to do anything else. I think I'm just going to ride it out. Are you going to be okay if I want medical aid in dying? Watch what kind of language. Listen. First of all, watch what happens to that doctor's expression and body language. Again, body language. Second of all, listen to the language that you're going to get. It's just a really eye-opening experience. Listen to the language that you're often given by your family members about getting old and what their plans are for you and how they foresee it. And the language of death to me is just, you need to uplift it and inspire people. We have so many decisions to make over the course of our lifetime, and dying is absolutely, hear my language, it's absolutely the last, very most important thing that we should have a choice on, if we're able to. And almost everybody is able to have a couple choices. Forget what people have told you about, the things that, have normally been burdened on you. There are things that you can do. If you are absolutely sure that through whatever vice death is going to come for you, at whatever age it decides or decides not to come for you, then you can choose things like do not resuscitate. You can choose things in the language that we have, like you can resuscitate me for 9 minutes, but no more than 9 minutes, because after 9 minutes, there are multiple deficits. See, we don't explain, we don't talk about all these wonderful things that we have choices to make. And same with hospice. They give you hospice in home or at a facility. Groovy. Tell everybody what hospice consists of. Give them a history of hospice. Let them understand that, it is not dying with dignity. It is not medical aid in dying. It is virtually a singular choice that was created basically way back in the time to give people extra time to get their affairs in order. Well, I was taught differently. You don't wait until you're in a hospice bed drooling and a zombie-like and stuff coming out of your orifices, your body's shutting down, you're jaundiced, you're barely coherent. That is not the time that I was ever told that that was the extra time for me to get my stuff in order. I was told that you had a lifetime to plan for that you had multiple decades to put a death plan into play. And you could have multiples. Because there's so many ways that death is brilliant. It comes in many facets, in many forms. And, the bottom line is, no matter how you life, when we are birthed, we are fresh and new. And yes, but it's not beautiful. They're basically, most babies are kind of ugly and stuff until you give them a few days and you clean them up and they kind of conform into what their, bodily body's going to be about. Death is the reverse process. And that's what makes it so beautiful. Because this body, this organic, beautiful, beautiful body that we are allowed to be encompassed in, to be enclosed in for this time, has come from that moment of entering this time with all the gook and yuck on them and the celebration and everything. And they went through life and they up or down, in or out, sideways or whatever, they're here. They're actually at the finish line, like I talk in the last podcast, and they're good. Yeah, they may be gone in 6 months, but up until now, they have a plan. They were able to be verbal and speak and put things in place. And so now they're at the finish line. And the sad thing is, it's up to the community. It's up to the medical doctors. It's up to all the people who are speaking the language against this person not having a beautiful, perfectly placed, well-imagined death plan. To not stand behind that person, no matter what your language tells you, no matter whatever the language that you were raised on, that you were trained on. Put all that aside. The only language that matters is the person at the finishing line. And this is what makes it beautiful. Get behind it. Celebrate it. You did when they were born. The doctors, everybody, woohoo, woohoo. Do the same thing. It's like being on your last sale, I guess, or your last, when you have that last one moment for your 15 minutes of fame, or the last moment to leave a legacy. So somebody down the line will go, check that language out. Check how that person went out. Man, that's inspiring. I want to do that. I want to be that. That's how I was taught. I was taught there was a wisdom that came in those final months. I even had a couple years with some people. It was the wisdom and the stories and the language that they used to describe not only their life, but what they saw coming next. It's their language. And after all, isn't that the most important thing? Aren't they the ones, the star of the show? It's not the doctors. It's not the hospice people. Oh, and again, no ill blood at all. Many, many, many gratitudes to all of you. If it weren't for you, there would be no system at all. And I'm not for chaos. As much as I can see beauty in it, I don't think that's one more language term we ought to add to the death column. we are so entrapped and encroached in, the religious aspect of, and the medical aspect, and oh God, the insurance. Let's not forget the insurance companies. Oh, and God forbid we forget the not involve the legal aspects of it. Like all you people have some sort of mark in how I choose to die. What is wrong with you? How did all your language somehow now supersede and go directly against how I envision the end of my days going? And for me to have to conform to be legit or to have some sort of resources for the people who are helping me achieve this and doing it my way, who are listening and who have followed me through pretty much all of my life and my journey and how I relate to death, and they are a part of my vision. Somehow that's not good enough. Somehow we're not smart enough. Somehow we're in some deep, deep, desperate mode. I'm sorry. I don't buy that. That's a cop out. It's an excuse. It's an excuse. And even if there is a small percentage of the population that when they get the terminal news, when they get that, they do fall into a desperate and a crisis mode and a sad mode. I'll venture to say, if you go back, their legacy, their walking with death throughout life was either null and void, they never had it, or they stuck so close to the language that they were preached to that now there's nothing but fear. And they didn't have a plan. They weren't inspired to live up to a death that is about autonomy and about compassion and about dignity. It was a reckoning. It's a little bit of extra time to make all those things wrong right. That's ugly language. I'd be scared too. I'd be real scared if that was how I foresaw my death. That if that's what I became after I got the diagnosis of what's to come. And to the people out there, how can I help? I wouldn't want myself to be in that position, let alone any other human being. It's just, I hope my language actually makes a difference out there when I speak. I hope that when I talk about death, I get people to become less fearful, to become less negative, to embrace all that there is, all that there's to come, and then being there at the final end, embrace it. You get one life, one death, for the most part. I mean, I don't have any answers on the other side of that. I have hypotheses and theories, and I have fantasies, but I don't actually have a tangible I don't have anything tangible to hold on to what, may come. But I do have very, very clear and very, very compassionate thoughts living here and being here. And there's enough people embracing life and discussing life, and there's enough people who will continue to inspire. And mine with the death movement is to get that to happen with death. I want people to stand up and say, yes, I'm ready. Yes, I have choices. Yes, I can do assisted dying. I can do medical aid in dying. I can go to a holistic death retreat. Maybe I could, there's just so many things that would inspire people and would It's not going to negate all the grief and the pain and everything that's going to happen, because that comes afterwards. That's what's left for the people left to go through. But what the dying person is going through, the stages are, if the death plan is there, then they're calm and they're peaceful. And you will have moments of connection. And the fear won't be paralyzing. It won't be the overall consuming feeling that you have. It's going to be the language of death that this person has planned for their whole entire life. And it will be a language of love more than anybody will truly know. And I've seen it. I've seen the calmness and I've seen the peace that families have when their loved ones have a death plan, when they walk behind them, when the language of death is not about shadows and darkness, but about embracing, planning, and making it one hell of a last stand. So, my friends, I hope that I've kind of encompassed it all. Please feel free to reach out anytime. How can I help is honestly my first tag when someone reaches out. How can I help? And anyways, this is the end of the Language of Death series. I'll be moving on to another one, another subject, or another in my next episode. Thanks again. You can follow me on Instagram at Dying on Your Own Terms. You can look at me on Facebook. You can Google me. I don't have all my links at hand. I'm busy talking death, and I get behind on my social media sometimes. And I understand that that's a good way to reach you, but I also find too that, staying pretty close to my community and touching people real is kind of the thing I do too. So be well, be blessed, talk death, death talk. Love you guys. Bye.